Welcome back to Made Up of Wires. We're decompiling Castlevania Symphony of the Night. If you want to know more about the Castlevania Symphony of the Night project, go to soten.z.dev. You'll find a link to GitHub, where the source code that we compiled during this stream, as well as source code that many others are decompiling, where you can find that. And then there's also a link to Discord where you can see me causing all kinds of chaos and breaking things. Yesterday I was trying to upgrade Splat and ended up breaking progress in the meantime. So yesterday we were working on this library function, and I wanted to play a little and try to find where this is. I did end up doing that offline, and I'll go through it again, and it's actually kind of a curious thing, and I think I know what it is, but I'm not sure. Yesterday we found that this is a partial duplicate for something else, and so I think that it's worth looking at that as well. And then I'll tell you why I think it is what I think it is. So let me bring up an emulator here, and I am gonna leave this room. So the entity is only in this room in the long library as far as I can tell. There are a few rooms that I haven't been to, but I can visit those as well. I don't think it's in any of those other rooms. Let's see what's going on. Why am I not able to play? Let me check my controller. Something happened with USB. There we go. Nope, that's not it. Controller says on. Try one more time. Nope. Maybe this won't work out. We paused? Is that the issue? Oh yeah, we paused. That's why. Okay, so I'm going to go through and not watch on OBS because there's, as bad as I am, that would make me even worse. If I would enable that breakpoint now, it will trigger. I've gone through and I've cleared all of the enemies in this room, so it's not an enemy. And I was expecting it to be something related to maybe the books, but it wasn't those. We can look for those if they haven't been decompiled yet. That'd be a nice thing to look for as well, especially if we get through the next version of this. I did the jumps up here, killed the stone rose up there, so there's nothing left. So now I'm going to re-enable this breakpoint, and the breakpoint won't trigger. If I would come into the room from the bottom, this breakpoint would trigger almost immediately. Actually, it would trigger immediately before loading any of the stage graphics. So the breakpoint is not related to the books. And it's not related to Stone Rose. The major difference between when I played through the first time was I grabbed the fairy card, and so the fairy card wasn't there anymore. I thought, well, maybe this is related to the fairy card, but there's some weird graphical things. The fairy card just sits there and kind of blinks. So I was pretty sure it wasn't that, because we're calculating X values, and that's one hint as to what this is. We're only calculating what's this? We're only calculating changes in X and whether we're going one way or another. I guess there is a little bit of calculation around Y as well, but for the most part, it's much more static than our X calculation. And there's actually a bunch of geometry math related to it as well. So what could this be? So, continuing on, we get down here. Oh, and now we hit the breakpoint. And I'm going to disable the breakpoint because from this point forward, once this entity is loaded, it doesn't get unloaded. And so if you come in from the top, you won't have this loaded until you get to this point in the stage. If you come in from the bottom, it'll be loaded immediately. So I'm going to disable this for real this time. And we'll go down here. And so we have the ectoplasm and okay. And what is this? Is this also ectoplasm? The pink one and the multicolored one. And so I killed those. Those entities don't exist anymore. Killed all the breakables up here. Those entities don't exist anymore. But what is behind and has some geometry related to X? It's all these background sprites through the window. As far as I know, there is a little bit going on in the bridge rooms with some parallax scrolling, but I believe that this is either the chair or the desk in the background, and I don't see anything related to any params, so I'm guessing this might be the desk. I don't know that for sure, but that is my current guess. One thing that I can do is set the step for this entity to be something relatively high. Let's see if I can do that. So A0 is going to have the pointer to whatever this entity is. So that is at 8007 CODB. So we can go to 7 CODB. Quite a ways down here. So we're at 70 C D. And so we're starting, this entity is starting right around here. And let me see what the offset 4 step is. I don't remember that offhand. Oh, we could actually look over here and see on line 16 what field are we loading. We're loading offset 2C. So for our 7ODB, we need to add 2C. Let me grab a calculator. Make sure I'm in hex mode. 7CODB plus 2C is 7C107. 7. Oh, I'm not even in the right place yet. 7C107. So 7C107 is going to be here. And so we're little endian, and this is a 16-bit value. So we're going to be loading the bottom byte first, followed by the upper byte. So right now our step is 0. Is that true? That's when we'd be allocating the primitives. So I don't think so. So I must have miscalculated somewhere along the way. Let me see. I'll try that one more time. A0 is 7COD. Oh, 7COD8. My nearsighted vision is leaving me. I was trying to solder something this morning and doing a terrible job at it. Okay, so 04. Here is our 1. We're at step 1. So let's change that to step 99. Or anything over 1 actually will get us out of this loop. So let's just say I don't want 21. Not 21's fine. So now what should happen is we're not going to be updating the X and Y values for this anymore. So whatever entity this is should just stay static where it is. So the entity won't be destroyed, but it's not going to be updated either. So let's see if we can figure out what this is. So I'm going to disable this breakpoint again, and we're going to unpause and then move around. Oh, and it looks like it is the bookshelf in the back. And so you can see the bookshelf is it is scrolling along with the foreground columns, but it's not scrolling like it should. So we can go back and change this back to a 1, and now we're scrolling like we should. So this is the books in the back. So we know what that is. Actually, then the other one is likely either the shadow over, or it may be some of these mid-plane elements like the chairs. So let me update that comment, and this is Parallax 2Ls. All right, so we do have another function that is something similar to this. So let me pause. And so what's interesting is the game will load those entities. And so it's more advantageous from a performance perspective, potentially, to come into this room not from the bottom and not have to load these and redraw them, because they, even though they're clipped, they're going to be redrawn every frame once they're loaded. That is something we could look at changing as well. Once these go off screen, can we unload them? That might be worth looking at. All right, so let me shut all of this down, and we're going to go look for the other one. And I'm going to do a search over here. So like I said, I was messing with Splat a little bit. One of the things that I think would be neat to do in Splat, so this is still, nobody has taken that yet. Then I'm going to duplicates to look for the next one. One of the things I thought would be nice to do in Splat is we have an increasing number of these overlays, and every time we add a new overlay, there's a bunch of boilerplate that needs to be repeated for each of them. And one of the things that we're finding is a default value, for example, has changed in a later version of Splat, and now we have to go through 15 configs and update all of those. And that sucks. It'd be nice to update that in one place. So I've made a small change to support parent configs, and it's very, very early in that change's life cycle. And what that would enable you to do is say all US config should have these basic settings. All US stage config should have these basic settings, etc., etc. And so hierarchically, you can define your configuration, and then you get less and less config further down. So I'm going to see if it's a small change. I think quality of life change for Splat config. I'll see if Mark and others are amenable to that change at Tech, and then probably look a little more at some of the performance stuff that I was mentioning earlier. So here's our related function. And actually, as long as I have the debugger open, we may as well look at that as well. I am going to look for that. And it is close by. I'm going to see where that is. Okay, it's the file right after. So these may be something that could be split out into the same thing. We should also look to see what this is as well. I am going to open DuckStation back up and add this breakpoint. And my guess is that it is going to trigger right away, and it does, as expected. So I want to see here now. We basically can pull the same trick looking at A0. So this time we're at 7C194. And if we add 2C, that gets us 7C1CO, which is much closer. And we'll change that to, oh, I don't want to do that. Can't undo. Let's see if that was 0. It was not 0 before. Can I revert? How do I revert? DuckStation, help me. Let's see what the field before. Let's see. Step is, so this is the entity update function. So this is actually somewhat fortunate. I think this is going to be 8.0. Yeah. Whew, that's a close one. Okay, so now I can undo that and unpause. And now we should see what else is not moving. What else is not moving? So the bookcase is still not moving. Oh, the chair and the desk. So let's set that back. And now the chair and the desks are moving. I'm going to center this one. Yep. Okay, so this is the chair and the desk. And let me shut all this down again. And it looks like terminal is not capturing. Does your entropy gravity well, nice to have you back, asks, will this work on a Samsung smart fridge, or should I hold off on purchasing a new one? As long as your Samsung smart fridge runs Windows 3.11 for workgroups, it should not be an issue. So I want to look at the next one as well and see if that one is in this same area. If it is in the same area, then I'm gonna it will influence where I want to split the file. We add another breakpoint. And we hit that right away as well. And this time we're at 7C250 is where our entity is. And so that's 7C2, 7C, 7C2, 7C. And perhaps this one is the shadow. We'll see. That looks like the shadow. So I think we have all three. And then for kicks, I'm going to grab the last one as well. I should say the next one. And we pause there. Oh, this might be the pillars being drawn on top. So A0 is 7C250 plus 2C. To get the step is C2, 7C. Oh, that's where I just was. So this is the same entity. So it looks like it's related to the shadow. So the first one may be like a helper function. And then we have a bunch of RO data after that, which is for functions down below. There is one function before all of these as well. I will grab that one and add a breakpoint for it. And see if we hit that one. That one hits right away. And so its A0 is 7. It's the same A0 there. Okay, so related to Parallax as well. And then the one before that. Basically, I want to see how many of these functions are related to one another, because then those likely were all in the same file originally. This next one hits right away as well. A0, same A0. Just want to make sure that I'm hitting the right breakpoint. I'm not. Unfortunately, DuckStation has chosen to flake out on me and continue to hit this B8. I don't want you to hit B8 anymore. So let me enable E8 again. So E8 is unrelated. And let me add back 80 one more time, just to make sure. 80 is unrelated as well. Okay, so we just have those three. The shadow, the bookcase, and the desk and chairs. So the shadow, interestingly, does not show up in the duplicates report. But we will move on to this F538 function and try to get that, and then we can look at the shadow as well. I always think it's interesting how much code gets dedicated to something seemingly trivial like this. I say trivial in the nicest way possible. It's a great effect, but it also seems very specific to this use case, and it's not just here are my parallax planes. Let me draw something at this particular layer or another. So we have a note here, parallax bookcases. I'm going to open this in a new tab because this is related. And let's choose the right compiler. I do want to see if I have the right primitive. And I have the PSP version, so I'm going to switch that. And I'm going to add the function signature for this, which will be, it's an entity update, so it'll just take an entity. And I'm going to start, because this is so similar, I'm probably going to start with the other implementation and then switch back and forth between what M2C produces for this. Looking at the other things that I need to worry about, aspector values are changing. What's interesting is that this is considered an interactable, but it's not really that interactable. My guess is that the delta is going to change. It's going to be scaled depending on which frame this is. So this is the chairs and desk. And so this is not going to move as much as that bookcase in the background does. So like I said, I'm going to start with this one. I will avoid grabbing the globals, and I'll just switch them now. So 49 is, I'm going to assume it's the first one, but we'll fix that. No, it's the second one. All right. So we're at 87%. We're missing something that's happening around the GPU buffers, and it's this color selection. So it's likely that the bookcase is grayed out slightly. So we can get rid of that. And then we have some register issues, maybe some ordering, some constants here, it looks like. So we're changing our color lookup table. We're changing the texture coordinates. This should be 5.0. The priority isn't being set on these primitives. Not sure what that tells us, or doesn't tell us. Or maybe it's the draw mode. Let's bring that back. Oh, the priority is being set to the value of A3, which is 50. And since that's being loaded already, it's going to be loaded once and then reused. So we still have some register issues, which should shake out when other things work out. Like I said, the distance that these are moved is going to change. So instead of 124, this is 128, 127. No, sorry, 120. Going the wrong direction. So slightly smaller. And then we'll come down here, and these are smaller as well. And then this, the shift for the height has changed. And we're almost done. 28 and 29. It looks like these should be 0. And let's grab the decomp and cheat a little. So we have our 80 F8 or 0. 1C is here. There we go. So that one is done. And these are the desks. And so we can grab that and take it over. Actually, this I had included this. The one where I have the upper one compiled is in a separate branch. And it looks like I probably have to clean. And like I said, I was mucking around with Splat, so it's possible that my branch is broken. Yeah, it looks like it is. Let me stash these changes and a few changes here. I'm going to revert this. It did have all my comments in it. Bummer, but that's okay. I'm going to stash the rest, and then I'm going to also install the normal version of Splat that we're using because there's some breaking changes. Doesn't it install F? Not Plat. I want Splat. Splat 64. Oh, come on. Oh, not editable. Dumb. I'm done. Right. I'm going to go back to my library branch, pull all those changes. Get a clean build and then continue on. The other function that is in this set was this, I believe this B8 function, F7B8. So I can start looking at that one as well. Let's and see if that one is in there. I wouldn't expect it to be necessarily. And this is the branch that I had. So here we have Parallax bookcases. $110 is going to be our Parallax desk and chairs. Oops, wrong one. Uh, 280. I see what I did now. I grabbed the wrong, or I just pasted over the function name. So I need to grab the right function name. All right. Now what? Now what? 7B8 is already defined. What did I do wrong now? That is also the wrong function name. All right. Now we're compiling. So the only thing that references these functions, I believe, is going to be the entity list at the beginning. So we can rename these without having to create symbols, which is really nice. I am going to move on to this one, though, and see if we can do that one quickly as well. My guess is it's going to be very similar, with the exception of it needing some transparency that the other ones don't have. The desks have completely transparent or not, whereas there's some translucency here. And we'll go for that one as well. My hope is that they are very similar. Isn't that everybody's hope? And we'll make that also a standard entity update function. Is there anything else I need to consider? Let's look for the primitive. Make sure that's the right version again. It is this time. When you create a scratch, I believe the context is saved to be used next time, which is not always what you want, but so again, this is very similar. I'm not sure why it didn't show up along with the other ones. There is, yeah, I think I'm going to just base it off of this other function. And let's see, the one thing that was missing was, so there is some, there's some additional stuff here. There's an entity extension that is being set, which isn't on the others. and some additional stuff here, which looks possibly unique. I am going to start here though, and we can add what is missing. So this is going to be something very similar. Init interactable needs to be an array. We'll need to update these S vectors. And then we should have some holes in here where things are a little bit different, and have also kind of the same thing where these values are different. For the X coordinate. Right. I don't recall if anything happens with the shadow when you jump. You can look at that as well. So there's a couple other things going on here, with some things being loaded that aren't there. But this is the general structure, and we can see then primitives are being configured a little differently. Values are being set differently. I'll go through and do that same thing here, where the values do need to be updated to the right values. And I'll look at the decomp, grab those from there. So it does look like the texture page is not being overridden because it's likely, I was going to say it may not be getting a texture, but it looks like it is, and the color lookup table is not being set. Only U and V0 are being set. And then RGB are all being set to 0. Priority being set to 60. Draw mode being set to hex 13. And then immediately below, if we're taking the last primitive and doing some additional work to it. So first we're setting some we can use the prim entity extension because that's the only entity extension that we need. There's going to be some more work done here, possibly, that needs to change. But then just setting up this last primitive. This needs to be a little different though, because var S0 is always set to, we need one more primitive pointer. And this one is going to be set to last. And we could, I'll keep it this way for now. I could reassign it to prim at the end, but I'm not going to. It is in a separate register, so this is probably fine. And depending on how this goes, it could be that this is like the window, and that the rest of the primitives are the shaded portion. Odd that RGB is being set again down here. And priority and draw mode are being set to the same thing. One thing I don't know, RS0, if this loop never goes through, so the allocation has to succeed. So implicitly, the first primitive is going to be set. So that's fine. I'm going to move this to the top to match the original. I don't know if it makes a difference. It doesn't seem to make a difference. So we have draw mode, and then Y. I'm going to put that next to X for now, and we'll move it if it needs to be. All right, and let's see what that looks like. So 18, we actually need 10 primitives. We're loading an immediate of 4 into A0. Oh, prime GT4. We need to change what this is. So let me figure out what this 11 is. Hey, Orphis. Flo, it's good to catch your stream yesterday. And I haven't seen what the 11 is. So it looks like tile alt. Not one that I'm familiar with. So on line 24, the immediate difference is the location of the branch. So in both cases, it says it's branched into E8, but that these are not the same E8. And so we have to figure out what is missing, and there's a move that's missing. I mentioned earlier that I didn't think that this was being reassigned, but the move may suggest that it is. Yeah. And then all of these will become prim. I was hoping to reuse the entity extension that's just prim. Unfortunately, this uses the next field over, so we do have to create a new entity extension, which is somewhat of a bummer. That just adds complexity that isn't necessarily fun when you can get away with not using it. It doesn't look like anything other than that entity extension is being used, so I'm not quite sure why. There's a bunch of code down here that's missing as well. We'll have to look at what that is. So let me save that. I am going to go to the context and create a new entity extension for the shadow. we'll just call this library shadow. And we don't know what is at the first field in this entity extension. So it is 32 bits. That's all we know. And then at 80, we have a primitive pointer. We should have that defined at this point. And the rest we don't need to know anything about. And now we can go back here, and instead of prim, we'll use library shadow .prim, and that should be the correct field now. So line 34, yes, we are correct there. Okay, so somewhere around line 70 is where things change, and this implementation becomes different from the chair and bookshelf. And I'm just kind of scanning through to see if there's anything obvious. So a bunch of stores to, so we are loading that primitive again. Somewhere down here. And then doing some work on it. I'm going to grab those from the decomp. So M2C wasn't able to figure out which field this is, and that's because illegal is one of the first things, and it'll find the first match here. So I'm going to get rid of everything but the library shadow in this union. And then when the decomp happens, it should choose the library shadow and figure out that this is a primitive, and it does. And so we can grab most of this and then just replace the variable name. And that should get us a little bit closer. These RGB is inline. And pretty in draw mode should be close to each other. And I think all that should be correct now. And it looks pretty good. So the next thing then is this section here. So this is being calculated slightly differently as well. And let's go back to M2C to see what is going on. So I have to be careful about how this loop gets unrolled, and it might be worth maybe not. I was going to say it may be worth just restarting from this original source, but I think this should be fine. So we're doing the same thing where we're incrementing x eventually. X is being set to the old version of x prior to all of this happening. Our comparison still looks like it is on 256. So once we go out of the screen scope, so I mentioned before that those primitives were being drawn. It looks like they're not being drawn. All this logic needs to run. And so the entity still exists when after this is loaded, but nothing is having to run. No drawing code, at least. And that should be most of what's there. So we're setting the draw mode to 8. Let's hide still. I don't see really anything different, but it looks like I am missing something. So still in this area. And it could just be ordering. So we're looking at offset 8 in the primitive. Offset 8 is x0. And that maybe the difference that x2 is not getting set. Yeah, I'm not sure how this works because these are quads. When these other fields aren't getting set, what the default values are. And maybe it just doesn't need to change. But yeah, the other x values are never set. I guess that's fine. That's the way it is. How can I judge? Down here, we're setting, we're never setting x1 or 2 or 3. So we can get rid of all that. And then we're also only setting y0. And I think that's it. And yep, that matches. The only thing not matching is this function, which is not terribly important because it will match when we compile. So that is here. And have to add the library shadow struct. We failed. What did we fail on? So at 2F800, I have a B8, and I should have an E0. Let me confirm that again. I want to find where this is. Grab this address. So we're looking at this instruction here. So I said, this doesn't matter. It mattered. And the reason it matters is because it must be a different API function than I was than is being used in the others other functions that are related. So it is this address that's being loaded that's wrong, and it's the next function either before or after. Let me look at that again. Yeah, that would be nice to have a disassembly diff when it doesn't match, and it could be there. So I wrote the output for our check function. It's just SHA-SUM made with the C option, made a little prettier, marginally prettier at the best. So it's relying on just relying on the output of SHA-SUM, and it branches on that. So yeah, it could diff. So I want to load that file back up and go back down there. And then I'm going to go back to decomp.me, and decomp.me will at least give me the correct symbol. And from there we can figure out what function I was supposed to be calling instead of the one that I was. Oh, this is instead of allocate primitives? Line 18? Yeah, instead of allocate primitives. Huh. So this does seem like an alternate primitive allocation function then. I'm not sure. We could go look at that and see what it does. I don't know that I've necessarily come across this before. So on 127, nope, down more. And we're replacing this function call with this. And now we match. And that's good. So let's look at what this GAPI function is. It's named dramatically, or generically dramatically, such a dramatic name. And we should have this decompiled. So the first thing I notice is this comment. This function casts its return value as a signed 16, but one caller needs to receive a return signed 32. What is more likely happening is that the function is being called with the default signature undeclared in the entity gravity boot beam. That would be my guess, is that it should be a signed 16, but it doesn't seem to be breaking anything else yet, so we can leave it for now. I'm a little surprised looking at this that it isn't just a alternate version. So this looks like it was something decompiled a long time ago, not necessarily using the current standards. I want to do this. I want to see, is this in the duplicates report? as a duplicate of allocate primitives. It's not. Let me put these side by side. And I'll get rid of the library one. Unfortunately, because these are written in such a different style, this may be harder than it needs to be to find the difference. My guess is that hex 400 is the max primitive allocation count here. And that's why we can guarantee that this first while loop is always going to succeed. And varv1 is just continuing on. So that could also be at the start of this function, possibly, and the compiler is going to know that can't be true. So I'm gonna see if I can finesse this into something slightly nicer. Yeah, I would have to go back to the source, but so we're not destroying any primitives until we get down here. This loop below seems relatively similar. We're setting next in type, but that doesn't really make a difference. So allocate primitives looks like it's looking at the current index. You have to tell it whether or not to depending on the type, whether it's going to be destroyed or not. I'm not sure what. This doesn't seem necessary, but it fails without it. Funny. Oh, because this should be a plus equals. I see. Or not, you know, whatever. Weird. Weird. This is really weird. Well, we know that it's an alternate version of allocate primitives. It looks similar but different for reasons that I am not sure about yet. Anyway, so we have the three functions in the library. I'm going to do two things to finish off. I'm going to split this file here. It's possible I didn't trigger the breakpoint at 8E8, didn't trigger the breakpoint at FA80. So I'm going to assume that these are in their own file, separate from the others. I also am going to rename these. And we'll call them just like background, whatever they are. So to rename them, I need to update the only other places where these symbols are going to be referenced. And those should, it's not decompiled yet. I was going to say it should be the header. Usually that's one of the first things that comes, and nobody has done it yet. If the header did exist, I could just update the symbols there, but because it doesn't exist yet, if I were to rename these, I'd also have to add them to the symbol table file, just temporarily. So now I need to think deeply about whether or not I'm going to import the header or add the symbol table file. A lot of the work that normally is done up front on the long library wasn't done. And I didn't do it because other people had started working here. And I figured somebody was going to do it up front, but it hasn't been done. Yeah, they are. The two S vectors, Dig Down Deep is saying, are they supposed to be different? The DC08, DC0 and DC8. Yeah, they are two different ones. As my nearsightedness disappears, I'm having more and more trouble differentiating between zeros and eights as well. And B's, it's terrible. It's terrible. So let's see what we can do. I don't want to leave these named generically. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to split. I'm going to add these changes and commit them. All right, so we have that committed. Next thing is to use splat and split these out. One of the nice things about splitting them into their own file, especially if we can get the data to come along with them, is that we can map this into a PSP file as well. I don't know if, yeah, I might take the time to do that. So our split is going to be at this 1AF280, which translates just into 28 F280. And I can I can't confirm that because this branch is already like this. So I'm going to call this library background. And then we need the other side of the split, which is going to be this FA80. We can't be at 8, we have to be at B. And let me whoa, I'm doing the wrong thing. We won't have any RO data for this, but the RO data, I was looking at the wrong place. We need to change this in the text area, not the RO data area. We will need to change the RO data as well, though. So let's go back up here. And this is going to be 2F 280. And the other side of it is going to be 2F A something, A80. And we'll just call that unknown 2F A80. Now we have this new split, which is going to include everything from here down. If we're lucky, this isn't going to break anything. If we're unlucky, it will break something. And we see there's a bunch of RO data coming in. The RO data is read-only data. And we want everything at that point down to be associated with this new split that's unrelated to the library background. So I have to come here, grab this 2FA80, and add a RO data split. Fortunately, we don't have any RO data in this other area. So B960 is where this is starting. And that will get the same name. We do have data, though. Hey, Mozilla. Shop item stuff went good. So I was able to get all the shop stuff decompiled. What I didn't realize is that the PSP inventory was different from the PlayStation inventory. So the first time I did it, I used the PSP data, and that failed. But other than that, it went pretty well. So there's a eshop.c file in the library stage in GitHub. You can look at that and see if there's anything different or new that you may or may not have seen before. I don't think there's anything particularly crazy in there. So our last S vector is at this 801 DE8 position. So 8 bytes later, we need that data in this library background segment. And 8 bytes later, we need, so at DEA, that data to be part of this new segment as well. Yeah, I didn't end up doing the PSP, but yeah, mostly it was. So there's the change in price for the map from 103 to 105, and then quite a few additional scrolls. I think there's possibly 5 additional scrolls, and so there's a bunch of logic then that goes into computing which scrolls you should see, and there was one piece of the visibility function that I haven't finished yet, but I do need to get back to that. So this data starts at DC0. And that's going to be E library background. And I think that should be it. I'm going to create these files ahead of time. We can let Splat do this for us, but since we know what they're going to be named, we can prepare. And so I'm going to take everything after and create the library background file. And then I'm going to create a new file called unknown 2FA80. And everything that's not decompiled down here will go to that file. I guess there's some stuff in here that is has been decompiled. And I think that should be it for the split. And let's see if how badly this broke. Failed. So it looks like I may have gotten my offsets wrong. I'm going to run that again. And so, yeah, there's 4 bytes that I'm missing. And let me see if I can figure out where I screwed that up. I will still have the data from first C file. No, it got overwritten, so I won't have that. Let's look at what the library background data looks like. I'm missing one of these S vectors. So I need DE8. Why didn't that show up? DEA shows up. Oh, because I split this. Got it. I should be at DFO. Right? Let me do some math. Yep, FO. I was wrong. All right, let's try again. Wrong one. And that worked. I'm going to make sure all the files in the library get recompiled just in case. And that all works fine. So we have a split. We need to add our new files and add what was missing from. So we have a split and those functions decompiled. So now the last thing is giving these symbol names. I think I will add the symbols, not the way I want to do it, but I don't want to conflate this change with decompiling the header at the same time. And this is reasonably straightforward and doesn't require any extra work. So offset 80F28 is this is the Parallax bookcases. Bookcases, bookshelves. What would you say? I might just call this one furniture. And then the last one will be shadow. All right, so now all of these functions need those names as well. The nice thing about this is when mapping these on the PSP side, now we have nice names instead of having to choose whether or not to use the symbols from the PlayStation 1 version. The splat config unfortunately won't be recompiled when this symbol table changes. So usually I just touch the splat config, and now when I run make extract and make, it should regenerate the and I'll show you that. So there's going to be data that references those old function names. And that's going to be in what's typically called the header. It's the first part of the stage overlay. The offsets into that stage overlay are well known, and the game engine goes to specific offsets to grab different data, one of those things being the entity update functions for the entities that are live. And so this first, there's two different types of these header structures. And the game engine, based on the stage, knows which type it's going to be. They're very similar, but there are two different versions. And then this next one is where the entity, maybe not that one, or maybe it is where the entity updates are. Let me grab address. Yeah, here's where the entity updates are. So when Splat regenerates this, it should replace the symbol with the one that's now in the symbol table. And let's see if it does. And it did. So we have our background, bookcase, background furniture, and background shadow. Neat. So I will add that as well. And I think that's where we'll stop today. So we have some of the background elements in the long library. Kind of a interesting thing to find. Not terribly critical, but kind of a fun detail that was added in just one small part of that area. If you're just tuning in, I should do station identification a little more, but we have been decompiling parts of Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And you can learn more about that project at soten.z.dev. See what we've done so far, see the progress on the overlays. Been working on the long library, which is the latest overlay to be imported. Last week, I think it was, I brought up the JP 1.0 version and did some work showing how we would import a new version of the game. And I didn't submit that, and I probably will talk to Xianimo and Sozu offline. One of the things we need for build infrastructure is the game to decompile, and so getting a new version of the game is not necessarily trivial, but it'd be fun to get that in as well. Researching some of the versions of the game, what I learned along the way is the PSP version is thought to have been forked from the JP version of the game as opposed to one of the later North American releases, not just the JP version, but the JP 1.0 version. And I mentioned last week that I did some investigation there as well, and the HD overlays that are included in that version of the game do have the same hashes as the JP 1.0 version of the game. So there is some additional evidence to suggest that. There was just a PR recently talking about the text overlay. The text overlay for the PSP version is the same as the JP version of the game. I believe when you're going into new stages. So I think it would be good to get the JP 1.0 version imported and building, especially since there does seem to be a lot of commonality between the PSP version and that. So we'll see if I can get that done. But that's all I have for you today. Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. If there's anything that you want to see or know about Castlevania Symphony of the Night, PlayStation decompilation, or anything like that, feel free to chat, like, subscribe, leave a comment. I do now have a copy of the Saturn version as well, and I did look at that a little bit last night. Tooling for Saturn is not in the same place as the PlayStation tooling, so it might be a while before I do any streams with SH2 decomp, but we'll see. In the future, it will happen. That's all I got. Adios.